So one of the first steps in getting the classroom economy going is kind of deciding what jobs you're going to have in your classroom economy. Everyone needs to have at least one job because everyone's going to have to pay rent and you need money to pay rent. You'll have some students that'll probably say, oh, can I just be homeless, or I don't want a job, and I just say, no, you can't be homeless. You'll find a large list of jobs at myclassroomeconomy.org. You just kind of click on the grade that you teach, and then they'll have some jobs there that are appropriate for that age level. As you're brainstorming jobs, you'll want to think, what are the things that I do on the daily or the weekly basis that a student could do for me? Those are going to be your jobs. I'm going to share some of the ones that I've come up with over the years. These are jobs that I found save me a lot of time. These are jobs that some students have suggested in the past, and all of these may not make sense for what you're teaching or who you're teaching. Take what you can from this list and definitely add to it, modify it as you see fit. The pay scale for these jobs, rent is $1,000 a month. All of these jobs are going to be a little bit less than that, so it's going to require students to work to get bonus money, which I'll talk about in a later video. One of the jobs is head banker on mykidsbank.org. I give head banker basically the same authority that I have with the bank. This job, like several other jobs that I'll talk about, requires a letter of recommendation. As I'm introducing these jobs, I tell students that some jobs that require a lot more responsibility, you'll have to turn in a letter of recommendation from someone who's not your parents. And a lot of times it's past teachers or whatever. This in itself is a teaching point because it gives them an opportunity to kind of organize who can I speak to about saying things positively about me to get this job. It requires a little bit more initiative than just applying for that job. My head banker has a lot more work in the beginning of the year as they're setting up the accounts for all of my students. They're setting up automatic deposits depending on what the students' jobs are, to setting up automatic withdrawals for the students' rent. So it's quite a few hours of work in the beginning, but the rest of the year is kind of them just monitoring stuff. If there needs to be any changes to the automatic withdrawal or deposits, they're the ones that make that happen. So head banker is a really important job. Another job is bankers. On mykidsbank.org, you can have students that are able to make deposits and withdrawals into and out of the student accounts. Now, the difference between a banker and a head banker has full control over creating and deleting accounts. A regular banker, which is a bank teller in mykidsbank.org, they only have the power to deposit or withdraw money from any account. So most of their work happens on bonus money day, where students get a certain amount of bonus money and they go to their banker and say, this is how much bonus money I should be getting. And then the banker deposits that money into their account. So I usually have one banker per 4 students, so that way bonus money day doesn't take forever. Another job is the fine officer. I have a list of fines that I'll go over in another video, but about every week, if students received a fine, these are usually for misbehavior or tardiness or missing work or something like that. Fine officer takes a look at the clipboard where I've been tracking the fines. They have little tickets that I print out, and then they write down who's the fine for. They say what the fine is for and how much they owe, and then they deliver that fine to the student, and then the student has to pay the fine. I'll talk more about the logistics of how that actually works, but my fine officer is involved of writing the fines and making sure that they're paid for. Also needs a letter of recommendation. On my class website, for all of our lessons, I always have a place that says, if you're stuck and don't understand, here's some additional resources. For a while, I was looking for those resources, but last year I thought, well, why not make that a job for a student? So researcher is a job for one of my students. They find predominantly videos that are about the topic that we have. They'll email those videos to me. I'll just take a quick look at them and be like, yeah, these videos are great. Go ahead and put them on the website. Or no, this video is not very good. Don't use this one. In addition, I have a website designer who has to get a little bit more training than other students. Anytime I want to put up a new lesson on the website, I'll send them a bunch of notes, and then I have a template inside of my website that they'll basically populate with the information that I send them, which ended up being a huge time saver for me, having them put all that information on the website. I usually have a couple newsletter writers. I teach 6th grade and 7th grade math, and so I usually have 1 or 2 per course, and they'll basically come up with some kind of math-themed newsletter each year. Depending on the students, it's really kind of evolved into something different. I'll provide a couple links for some of the ones that I've had in the past so you can see what that looks like. Something that really annoys my OCD is when students leave and the tables kind of get messed up, and then the next class comes in and then they're not really fixed or not anything. One of the jobs is for someone to just straighten out those tables as soon as they get to class. Because usually if we're in a rush, I'll forget to tell everyone, hey, straighten out the tables before you leave or something like that. It's been good because it's just helped keep the class a little bit more organized. I like having blinds open in the classroom and windows open, so that's somebody's job to make sure that the blinds are open when they come into class. I call them the light keeper. A lot of times I run out of Expo markers and I'll be trying different ones and they end up dying, and then I have to send a student in the middle of class to go get some Expo markers from downstairs. So now that's someone's job. Their job is at the beginning of the week is to test all the Expo markers, throw out whatever's old, and then go resupply with the new ones from the supply closet that the school has. I have an assistant grader, not to grade any kind of written test or anything like that, but in my math class, the students use Khan Academy for homework. So I gave the assistant grader access to my Khan Academy account. She was only able to actually see which students did their work and which ones didn't. This one definitely needed a letter of recommendation, and I have this student sign a confidentiality agreement as well, and I keep their parents in the loop with all of that. Each class had its own assistant grader, and I created a Google spreadsheet where there was a tab for each class. And then the students went in and basically just notated who did their homework and who didn't. And if anything looks weird, I'm able to go in and check it out to see if everything's all right. That one you may need to get administrative approval for, but it's ended up saving me a lot of time. My boards manager comes in before school starts and writes the agenda and or learning goal for the day. I keep an updated Google Calendar, so I have them check the Google Calendar, and then whatever's on the Google Calendar, they'll put it up on the board. It's good to have someone with neat handwriting, and ideally someone who can write it up there before school starts. Attendance monitor. I take attendance on my iPad, and so they grab my iPad at the beginning of class, and then they mark down who's tardy or who's present. Because I always forget, and so that solved that problem for me. A visual display artist, if there's any artwork or things that I wanted posted up on the board or posters made, I talk to my visual display artist or artists, depending on if I get something different I'm going to do this year, because in the past, I got them to make all this stuff for me at the beginning of the year, but then as the year went on, I didn't think of anything else for them to make, and then they didn't end up really doing anything the second semester, and then still just getting paid to do nothing. So something I'm going to probably do is either once a month or once every 2 weeks, I'm going to have the visual display artists come in on Mondays, and then they're going to come up with what they want to create, and they run it by me on whether or not it's like a seasonal decoration thing or if it's just a math poster with some rules or whatever. I have a list of things that I need made, but once we get through that list, it's going to be on them to kind of brainstorm different ideas of what they'll create to add to our classroom. My clerk hands out papers, and they also assist the auctioneer on auction day by just writing down who bought what and for how much. My tech assistant is usually manning the computer when I'm having some kind of lesson, they're going to the next slide, or if I say, hey, can you pull up this website? Ideally, if they can type fast, I'll have that student type up stuff and project it on the board. The auctioneer's job is really important. It's up to them to visit local businesses and share what we're doing in our classroom economy and see if those businesses will be willing to donate anything to our classroom economy. I have a little letter that they take that kind of explains it. Obviously, they should go with their parents. They're also the person that when the auction day comes at the end of the month, they say, these are all the items I've got for the auction, and then they do all the bidding stuff, and they also get feedback from students on what kind of things are you looking for at this auction. I'll usually tell auctioneers, I don't want you to go buy stuff from stores and then bring it to the auction. I really want you to practice your fundraising skills. It's been pretty impressive. I've had companies donate $50 robot toys, the Hunger Games trilogy in hardback, and a lot of really cool stuff has been donated. A new job I'm trying this year is my messenger. During lunchtime, on Mondays, I'm going to be having several people come in to do their job, so that way we're not using as much class time to do it. Fine officers are going to write fines on Mondays. I'm going to have newsletter writers come in maybe once a month to brainstorm what they're going to do, and a few other things. I'm going to set up automated emails to send to these students just to remind them, like, hey, don't forget to come in during lunch on Monday. But likely a lot of students will forget. One of the jobs is going to be messenger. where it's up to them just to go find those students and say, hey, don't forget you have to do the classroom economy stuff in Tom's room today. I understand that there probably will be some students that are like, oh, I forgot, but I don't really want to go because it's my lunch period. But it's part of the job. It's just the messenger's job to deliver the message. It's not going to be their job to convince those students to come back to class. If those students decide not to come back to class, then there'll be other fines or something that they'll have to pay as a result of not completing their job. I'm also going to do a couple supplemental jobs that are not going to have as high salaries, that maybe someone who already has a job can actually get these supplemental jobs. One of them is substitute. It's just to fill in for anyone who's out, with the exception to like the more specialized skills. They're not going to fill in for the website design or anything like that. Also, I'm thinking about having a photographer. I have a class Instagram account, someone who's familiar with Instagram, who can take pictures and document what we're doing in class and then share that. In the description, I've linked to all of my jobs and their descriptions and their salaries, and if they need letters of recommendation for it, and if I plan on having them come in during Monday. Use whatever you feel makes sense for you in your classroom. Feel free to share different jobs that you use and why you use them in the comments below. And in the next video, I'm going to share where to go from here now that you got the jobs in place, ready to go. A few months ago, I created my very first episode of middle school robotics. So I'd like to start a new short series of videos on what's happening in my robotics class. And I've tried to create a new one just about every week that we've had middle school robotics. It is now the last day of school, and students will be presenting on their final projects, sharing what they learned, what was meaningful to them, and what they actually ended up building.